So you need to understand the rebels are fully influenced by Turkey and therefore by the United States. Whoever is providing you all the weapons and all the support and all the logistics, and they control you. So the Kurds need to wake up and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nobody in Syria, except the Alawites, which is 8% at best, they want Bashar Al Assad. The Iranians are being pushed out of Syria. The Assad regime is protecting Israel, sure, but is he stable?
Really?
Some of the rebels will be part of the government. What happens in Syria, it could basically take the whole region into a disaster.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to the I3 Pulse. Today we'll be talking about Syria, the world's most complicated conflict with many players and competing interests. It seems up until recently that the world has moved on and forgotten this conflict, with Bashar being included back to the Arab League. But recently, with the unprecedented quick advances by the rebels, we want to unpack what's really happening and what you really need to know. So stay tuned for this episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How's it going?
Alhamdulillah.
So Sheikh, I just want to jump to the first question. What's happening in Syria and why now?
Well, what's happening, everybody knows what's happening. The rebels moved from northwestern Syria, specifically in the Idlib province, and then took over many towns in Aleppo until they actually advanced into Aleppo, surrounded it, and took over from the western side until they took over the whole city. Aleppo is the second biggest city in Syria. It's actually the economic and industrial base of Syria. And within a couple of days, 2-3 days, Aleppo was taken over, which is surprised everybody. Why now? Wallahi, this is a bigger question. The rebels will tell you that they've been preparing for the last 1 year under the supervision of the Turkish authorities. It's very, very visible that most of the equipment and the military, even attires and so forth, have come from Turkey, and lots of Turkish weapons specifically. So the Turkish government controls or has at least a very strong control over the rebels. This needs to be understood. And definitely Turkey aligns with the United States in terms of what they want to do. That's why the American government was very, very easygoing. It's like, we were just watching. There was no emergency from an American perspective. And that tells you that the Americans are okay with what's happening. They were informed, they approved, it meets their interests, and they're just now watching how things unfold. Look, when did this happen? This happened literally right after the ceasefire. The ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon happened. The next day or the day after, these rebels basically went into their advance into Aleppo. I believe, from a regional perspective, if we zoom out of Syria, that definitely I think the United States has an objective to stop the militarization of Hezbollah. They want to cut off that. And what does that mean? That means basically pushing Iran out of Iranian influence out of Syria, to push Iranian influence out of Lebanon, like they did basically, which is they're going to do. They're also pushing Iranian influence out of Palestine, out of Gaza, and maybe in the future they want to push the Iranian influence out of Iraq and out of Yemen. This could happen, but at least for now, basically, it's very glaring that the Iranians are being pushed out of Syria. Even Bashar Al Assad, and he was threatened by the Israelis, if he keeps Iran in, they're going to kill him. This was direct threat by the Netanyahu government and Netanyahu himself. So there was news basically we heard from the ground, from the rebel media sources, that many Hezbollah offices were closed by the Assad regime. And also Hezbollah have pulled their people out. So
Yes.
There's two different news here that are a little bit contradictory. But both of them basically talk about why Hezbollah have left Syria. Hezbollah almost left Syria fully. Okay, there's remnants of Hezbollah. There's relative to what they had before.
So some would argue that, at least from the rebels' perspective, that because Russia has been focused on what's been going on in Ukraine and Hezbollah's been focused on what's been going on in Lebanon, that this was the time for them to basically make an advance.
This is the biggest problem with how Muslims speak about politics. They divorce it. They speak as if it's in vacuum. You know how in physics we say, look, if there is a vacuum, if you put this much force, blah blah. But there, in real life, there's friction, there's other environmental forces, and so forth. So engineers have to take that into account when they actually build machines. So similarly in politics, we cannot speak about any local theater, right, divorced from the regional and the global powers. It just doesn't make sense. So when we speak about the timing, that the timing of this event has to be aligned. I do not believe that the rebels were just preparing and they found the right opportunity and they moved. That's not correct. Why? Ask me why, maybe. The simple reason that maybe our viewers would be asking themselves right now is, what's the proof for that? The Turkish government have supplied these rebels with their weapons. And that means basically if they cut off that supply, those rebels would be fully under threat of being crushed by the Assad regime, the Iranian regime, and the Russians. So they have to be fully aligned with the Turkey approved this move. And anybody who doubts that have zero political understanding. I'm going to be very frank. Turkey, and not just Turkey because it's regional power. Who's above Turkey? The United States. So Turkey and the United States approved the rebel incursion into Aleppo. And if people don't understand that, sorry to say, they have zero political awareness.
A question about the advance, because the rebels took over Aleppo in unprecedented speed. Now they're approaching right on the outskirts of Hama. Is the end goal Damascus? And what will happen if they take Damascus? Is that even possible?
So the rebels are saying that, but you need to basically, again, zoom out. What is Turkey saying? Yeah? What is the United States saying? So Turkey, and we have a quotation from the Turkish government, from the foreign ministry or Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that what they want, they're saying the reason that the rebels, they're fighting Bashar Al Assad right now, or they're doing what they're doing right now, is because Bashar Al Assad failed to create a peace process that's inclusive to the rebels. His resistance, like, no, just my rule, or and him and his father, basically, they're super authoritarian regimes. That's how they work, basically. In the Syrian revolution, they used to have a slogan, which is Bashar Al Ahad. Bashar Al Ahad means basically either Bashar or nobody. So the Turkish government is now basically pointing at something that, look, the fault is not in the rebels, the fault is in Bashar. If Bashar basically was welcoming to create a coalition government between himself and the rebels, we would have a unified, peaceful Syria. Right? Forget peaceful, unified, stable Syria. In politics, people don't care about peace, sadly, these politicians. But stability is needed by the United States and by Israel. Having a stable and strong regime is in the super interest of Israel, to protect Israel through because they have borders, the Golan Heights, right? So having a regime that's strong enough, and stable enough, would basically protect Israel. This is in the interest of the Americans. Especially right now, basically, Trump coming to redraw the Middle East. What does that mean? Now we understand what they want. So they want to demilitarize Gaza. They want to demilitarize the Palestinians, definitely, especially Hamas, and other factions, not only Hamas. And they want to, if they might basically create some Palestinian so-called pseudo state under full Israeli control, really. Same thing with Lebanon. They want to demilitarize Hezbollah and push Hezbollah back into becoming a political party only. Same thing with Hamas. Hamas, basically, they're not going to, what are they going to do? They're going to exterminate all the Palestinians, or Hamas, right? They're not going to do that. They will basically demilitarize it and basically move it back to become a political actor only. In Syria, they want to push Iran out, create a government that is loyal to Turkey and the United States, that's secular enough, that would protect Israel, right? And have control of the population. The reason basically the United States wants a strong regime is Syria, not to oppose anybody else outside Syria. A strong regime within the Arab world and the third world, right, in the colonialized South, really. A strong regime is to control the masses, is to control its people. The Syrian people are revolutionary people, right? And even Rasul told us about the Bilad al-Sham has khair. What is this khair? The khair is basically being anti-oppression, anti-tyranny, anti-dhulm, right? So the people of Syria have proved that, 100%. I mean, you have 15 million people in Syria left the country because of the revolution, right? So this is the goal. How do you create now a strong secular Syria? The Syrian, nobody in Syria, except the Alawites, which is 8% at best, they want Bashar al-Assad. Nobody else wants Bashar al-Assad. Okay, maybe a few families who are basically also, part of the economic elites with Bashar al Assad, but nobody wants Bashar al Assad. Even these people don't want Bashar al Assad. I can remind you, basically, in the beginning of the revolution, some of the richest billionaires, Sunni billionaires in Syria, left Syria, like the Tlas family. The prime minister also defected and left, Riyad Hijab. He's being set up. These are secularists. Where are they? Right now, basically, they are in Europe and North America, and maybe some Arab regimes waiting until their role comes back to lead another secular Syria that keeps protecting the Israeli regime and serving the American interest in the region.
So, Sheikh, you mentioned the goal of America is to demilitarize the different groups, specifically in Lebanon, specifically in Gaza.
Yes.
And then you've also mentioned that they want a stable Syria so that there is that, Israel is not under threat, because that's something strategic for America. But the Assad government, even if there's all these conflicts, let's say in Syria, there's different factions. The fact that the Assad government has not encroached onto Syria, has not even fired even a single rocket, let's say, into the Golan Heights, isn't it fine enough to just keep things the way they are?
No.
It's stable enough for Israel.
No.
Why this? Why?
No. Why? Because the Assad regime is not stable. The Assad regime is protecting Israel, sure, but is he stable? Because if he gets demolished, khalas, then basically Israel will be at risk, and the region would be in chaos. The United States have already said many times, since a long time ago, that the future Syria does not have a place for Bashar al-Assad. You see what I'm saying? So I'm assuming that most likely the Americans don't want him to be part of the situation. So the revolution was controlled several years ago. The Syrian revolution really failed to a certain extent. And then, sadly, basically, the rebels were pushed just only on the Turkish border, and Turkey protected these rebels. Again, why? Until they controlled them. Today, Turkey controls all the three main factions of the rebels. The rebels come in three flavors. Those nationalists, some of them secularist nationalists. Yeah, you can say traditional cultural Muslims. Yeah. This is under the banner of the SNA, the Syrian National Army. This is fully built and supported by the Turks. The second one are basically the general Islamists. Yeah? These were basically just general Muslims who basically kind of had to go and oppose the regime and create these militias out of defections from the Syrian army itself, and this is called the National Front for Liberation, NFL. Okay, the main player with that was basically the biggest force in the Syrian Civil War, which was Harakat Ahrar al-Sham. Ahrar al-Sham was the biggest faction at one point in time. Now it actually it imploded, right? So whatever was remained, basically, is part of this new umbrella, which is the NFL.
Is this part of where this group that is referred to as HTS that everyone's speaking about? Is this part of the NFL?
No. It's actually a rival. Actually, the one that destroyed Ahrar al-Sham was what's today called Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS. Okay, it used to be called Jabhat al-Nusra, right? So HTS almost destroyed Ahrar al-Sham. So you have three. The third one is HTS. So there's HTS, which are basically Al-Qaeda affiliate. They're on the terrorist list in the United States. You have the NFL, which are the traditional Islamists. And then you have basically the cultural Muslims, the secularists, and so forth in the SNA. The NFL also reports to the SNA within the structure. Okay, it has a little bit of autonomy, but it's still within. HTS is also basically influenced by the Turkish intelligence, without a doubt. You see what I'm saying? So these are the three factions. Like right now, when we speak of the rebels, these are the three factions. Okay? At least these are the factions on the north, in the northwest. They're fully, as you can see, I'm telling you, they're fully influenced by Turkey. Fully. Even like HTS basically moderated its rhetoric and so forth, it's speaking about all that kind of stuff. So the goal of America is to, first of all, so at one point in time, these rebels needs to also be demilitarized, or they'll be smashed. Like Hezbollah, like Hamas. They have to be demilitarized, and basically whatever portion of this, especially the SNA, which is a little bit more secular, will be integrated into the new Syria. That's why it's called Syrian National Army. So this SNA seems to be the seed to build a new Syrian army for the country. But again, these other actors that used to be in the Bashar regime, which are the Sunni ultra secularists who left, they will be brought back to recreate a new Syria for everybody. So I think Bashar al-Assad will be thrown away when things are ready. But that's how politics works, basically. So the rebels, they had to basically tame the rebels, and that's why everything has national in it. Like the Syrian, the SNA used to be called the Free Syrian Army, the FSA. They had to add a Syrian National Army. The Ahrar al-Sham and these other Islamist groups. Now, what's their movement called? The Jabha al-Wataniya al-Tahrir, meaning basically the NFL, the National Front for Liberation. You see what I'm saying? The HTS is the only one that doesn't have a national in it, but they're also speaking about like national accommodation and being with everybody. Even their leader today or yesterday released a statement saying basically we will dissolve HTS. Oh, khalas, that's it. So what the heck? Definitely, this is part of the American plans, it's part of the Turkish plans, and they have control over HTS and they have control over all the rebels. So you need to understand the rebels are fully influenced by Turkey and therefore by the United States. It's hard to swallow. I'm not saying they're treacherous. I'm not saying they're traitors. I'm not saying they have bad intention. No. But whoever is providing you all the weapons and all the support and all the logistics, and they control you, right? Whether you know it or not, this is a different issue. We're not here in pulse. We're not gonna sugarcoat anything. We want the Ummah to rise. This needs to be understood. My talk right now is not against these people, the SNA and so forth. They might have good intentions. The rebels in general, the rebels in general have good intention. They want to take away a tyrant. I mean, even the United States will support that. Does support that, right? Because they're pro-democracy and so forth. But we need to understand the global powers have so much influence, and some of the regional powers have so much influence that these political actors, especially when they're not aware of these tricks, they'll be fully utilized and used and sadly thrown away after. And let's go back a little bit. Let's give another example. The Afghan jihad against the Soviets used to be called freedom fighting in America. The Americans
Ronald
set up.
Reagan used to praise them. Aren't they in Rocky? What movie was it? I forgot. One of the classical movies in American culture had Rambo. In Rambo, they had the Mujahideen as well. Afghan Mujahideen. Yes.
So the Americans used to support them in the open. They provided everything. The Americans were there training them in the open. Everything. So after they used those 7 factions against the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union was defeated, what happened to them? They threw them in the garbage and they replaced them with the Taliban. Who created the Taliban? The CIA, the Saudi Mukhabarat, Saudi intelligence, and the Pakistani ISI. This is known facts. Okay. Now again, does that mean basically? Are we
what does it mean to create? And I think that's what you're just going to clarify now. Like, what does it mean? Does it mean create means that now you have full control and people have sold out, or does it mean that the West had an agenda and then the people on the ground had their own agenda and saw where it overlapped?
Enabled them. The Taliban, without the ISI and the Saudi money and the CIA, would not have been able to take over all the 7 factions of the Mujahideen that destroyed the Soviet Union. Never, ever. Like, where were they basically in the Soviet Union, right? I mean, they might have some role, but small. And enabling one side to take over the other 7 is what these intelligence agencies have done. I'm not saying basically people came and took people and told them like act as whatever. This might be in other created pseudo militant groups that was fully created by the CIA. But in the Taliban, no, there existed. There are people, again, there are Muslims who had, they wanted free Afghanistan, they wanted Islam in Afghanistan and so forth. But again, these global and regional powers, they shape the destiny of these movements by altering their objectives or supporting them if they meet the objective. See, what you need to do as a world power, find the political actor that matches your interest and enable them. That's it. So Taliban basically was ready to be able to take over Afghanistan if they were enabled. So they enabled them. Same thing with the rebels. The rebels want to take over Syria. Right now, basically, when the Americans, when the time is right for the Americans to get rid of Bashar al Assad, they'll support them, take over, let's say, half of Syria. They'll support other factions, and they'll create a secular government that will keep the power within American hands in Syria. And then the rebels basically will, as I said, they'll be demilitarized, and then and the elements that any element in the rebels that will be the threat in American interests, they'll get rid of them. They'll bomb them.
There's a few things you mentioned from the beginning of the podcast till now, and I think it really sticks on or can be summarized with a very powerful idea that people make a big mistake on. Number one, people think that these factions on the ground, sometimes they ignore what's happening in the rest of the world, they ignore the superpowers' interests, and they think these factions are independent, which is a mistake. And then sometimes people go in the other extreme and they say, well, there is no interest for the factions on the ground, they don't have goals and ambitions, and everything is basically they're just fully controlled puppets. But there is full control, but there is also goals that the factions on the ground have, and then they're working within those boundaries that are set by these superpowers that are giving them these enablement and so on. So it's a very nuanced perspective.
Let me add a little bit more details.
Yes.
Agency in politics is two types. There is the full puppets, right? Like, and you could find those in Africa, in Latin America, in the Middle East, right? Some of them are full puppets, right? Maybe also in the 50s and the 60s, there were more full puppets than right now. And and sometimes also there's people who are aligned with the interest, and they just need the enablement. Whoever gives them the enablement, they will, work with them to attain their goals. Because see, everybody has goals. We're not saying basically these people are like rocks or wooden pieces. They're not. Everybody has goals. Every political action has a goal, right? It's just how much influence do you have? How much are you willing to basically exert of an effort and power to force the political actor to do what you want, right? So that's why when you speak about agency, we're not speaking about when somebody is an agent of a global power. Doesn't mean that they're traitors. No. They're doing their best to basically achieve their objective based upon their way of thinking. And sometimes it's Islamic, sometimes it's un-Islamic, sometimes it's politically aware thinking, sometimes it's not. You see what I'm saying?
I think this is not controversial in any way, because even those who are on the ground reporting on this, they're even saying that even Al-Jolani, the leader of HTS, or other folks, they're changing their stances as time moves on. They're assessing the reality, and it's really, at the end of the day, people running organizations are politicians at the end of the day, right? And being political, and they're sincere people wherever
So let's add one more thing. The Al-Qaeda and the leaders of Al-Qaeda have a big question mark, because usually they are fully influenced by the intelligence. Again, some people might not like to hear that, but this is the truth. ISIS was fully created by the Americans, by the CIA.
Yes.
Fully.
So that would be an example.
Fully.
Yeah.
These are the leadership is traitors. At least the initial leadership, fully traitors.
100%. They would take land from, let's say, they'll only attack the rebels, and then they'll give it back to the regime.
Yeah. Everybody knows. The Syrian people know.
Yes.
Outside Syria, people don't know.
Exactly.
And that's why Al-Jolani himself basically is not liked by the Syrians. Everybody knows he's at least a big question mark on this person. You see what I'm saying? And that's why he does not represent Syrians, doesn't represent the Islamic cause, doesn't represent Islam either. Okay? May Allah protect us and protect the Muslimin. It's just, again, politics is a pretty dangerous game.
And to even show how even dangerous his politics is, even like Jolani, he at one point he had allegiance to Al-Qaeda and so on, and then he flipped when it was convenient, and then he started jailing people, arresting people, fighting against them,
torture.
And
there was torture.
All these things.
Also,
So
torturing Islamists.
Yes.
Like, what the heck is this? But anyway, it's
so we've spoke about all these different, let's say, some factions. We haven't spoken to all of them, right? So the viewers, stay with us, because again, as we mentioned in the beginning, this is perhaps one of the most complicated theaters of political theaters, war theaters within the Ummah. So really, we're going to get through all the pieces. But I'm just going to pause this conversation for 1 second. I want to ask and go big picture here.
Yeah.
Why Syria? Why Syria? Why are there so many players in this conflict? Like, what's so special about Syria that there's so many hands in Syria?
I mean, the Syrian theater is very important because, again, as we said, it's in the heart of the Muslim world. If Syria goes wrong, Turkey could go wrong, Iraq would go wrong, Lebanon would go wrong, Palestine would go wrong. Impact on the occupied Zionist state, Jordan can go wrong. As you can see, there's like seven states that are impacted. And if those 7 states are impacted, the whole Middle East will be impacted. You know what I'm saying? So Syria, from a geopolitical importance, is very important for the stabilization of the Middle East as a whole. You know what I'm saying? What happens in Syria could basically, like literally, if it unravels, it could basically take the whole region into a disaster. That's how important this is. So that's why everybody has a piece of cake in it. And then the other thing is basically the opportunity due to the civil war have brought the Iranians, have brought the Russians, and so forth, and have brought Hezbollah from Lebanon also, and brought in Turkey. So there's there's something called strategic vacuum, right? When there's a strategic vacuum, it's like basically thermodynamics. The other forces around that vacuum would come in to fill that space just by nature of the world, right? So when the regime imploded, Iran came to fill, Hezbollah came to fill, Turkey came to fill, Russia came to fill, the Americans who control Bashar Al Assad basically also came directly to fill in some space. That's why there is actually U.S. soldiers inside Syria, in the eastern part, in close to Abu Kamal and Deir ez-Zor and so forth.
Sheikh, you mentioned that the Americans control Bashar. Typically, people would see it as Bashar has been leaning on the Russians, been leaning on, and so they would say that, no, well, they're not really controlled by America. They're working with Russia, and, they're getting destroyed by America because America is supporting the rebellion against him. So how do we merge those two things?
I wrote an article 12 years ago on the agency of the Hafiz al-Assad regime, Bashar's father. Who brought him into power in Syria was the Americans. You see what I'm saying? We can go through the history maybe in a different episode, but the Assad regime is fully an American regime, fully, right? At the end of the day, Bashar al-Assad during this time might be leaning on the Iranians and the Russians, because the his time is over. And the Americans still supported him to stay, right? But they don't want him anymore, and I think he realized that, which is why he's getting support from the Russians. And it doesn't mean he doesn't have any more communication or synchronization with the Americans, right? But if he's getting more support now from the Russians, because khalas, like he understands that his time, the America doesn't want him anymore. You see what I'm saying?
So we spoke about what's special about Syria, but we also spoke about the rebel factions, the SNA, the NFL, and we spoke about HTS. Now, another key player is the regime. We've touched upon the regime. Could you tell us more about who is Bashar al-Assad? The Assad family, they've been ruling Syria for over 53 years. What is their ideology? What led to all of this erupting in the first place?
See, subhanallah, if you're not from the area, I'm almost like, what kind of question is that? Almost like the Assad regime have tortured and killed so many people. Like the worst torture jails in the world, top 3, let's say, were in Syria. That's where you basically get your fingers cut. Forget nails. Nails will be pulled out. Your fingers will be cut. I have an older friend that I know. He's Syrian. He was jailed in Syria. They actually cut his fingers bit by bit. And they got his 15-year-old son, basically tortured him in front of him to basically crack him and get confessions and so forth. Rape is rampant. Gang rapes, basically. Tens of thousands of Syrian women in the jails of Syria. Some of the most horrific torture places. People, when they go into these places, they will never come back. So it's a horrendous, horrific, draconian, satanic regime that have crushed the humanity of people for 50 years. And everybody gets recruited to become a spy. I remember basically a mother was spying on her children because she would be threatened by the intelligence. She had to give reports on her children. This is usual, by the way. Every street there's intelligence. Like, it's not life. People inside Syria were dead. That's why they exploded. It's a fard upon us to basically take out this regime. It's a draconian, despicable tyranny that has very few equivalent in history, human history. It's kind of the Mongols. So the Assad family comes from the Alawite sect. They're not Muslim. They're non-Muslims. Even though they might call themselves Muslim, they're not Muslim. They don't believe in oneness of God. They don't believe in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They don't believe in anything. At least not as a final prophet and so forth. They don't believe in the Quran. They curse Allah day and night.
You see, their soldiers are telling people to say Assad is God.
Oh yeah,
they
worship Assad. They worship A'udhu Billah. They do sujood to him and so forth. And it's disgusting, akhi. When the French came in to colonialize the Middle East after World War One and took over Lebanon, there was no Lebanon, it was Syria. They propped up the minorities. They're only 8%, so they empowered this minority to take over Syria. So bit by bit, they continue to empower them. That's how the colonialists have done to every country. Even to non-Muslim countries like in Latin America, they will always basically go and empower the minority to create that balance against the majority and the tension, keep the tension going. And those minority will always be loyal to the West, right? Because they're minority.
Yes.
How do they stay? How do they stay on top? By basically support from the West. So the Western world is responsible for all the human right abuses that they speak about. They created the human right abuses. They created the oppression. They created the tyranny across the Middle East and Latin America and Africa and Southeast Asia.
And I'm asking these questions because people don't understand this conflict. They don't understand how draconian the Hafiz Al Assad and Bashar Al Assad, how draconian these two figures are. And for the viewers who don't know, I think this will be good for them to know. We know that his father was also a genocidal maniac. We know his father was
worse.
He slaughtered the people in Hama. Could you just talk about that, just so people understand that this is something they've been enduring for such a long time?
In 1982, that's like 42 years ago, Hafiz Assad came and devastated Hama. He actually bombed it with rockets and tanks. Only civilians, really. There were civilians, and they accused some members of the Muslim Brotherhood being inside the city. They killed over 40,000 people within a few days.
Subhanallah.
And 17,000 were basically, nobody knows about them. This is what I'm saying. Imagine 17,000 people, your children and your cousins, they disappear, and you've never, until today, Khazdan. We have so many stories, akhi. Some prisoners were forgotten for 30 years. They forgot that he was in jail. Oh, this guy's still in jail after 30 years. Oh, they found him. Oh, okay. Maybe we can let him go now. Akhi, the stories in Syria, the human mind cannot process it. And this is not me saying it. Ask any Syrian. You will get 100% same answer. Ask any Syrian. It's a national history.
It goes to show how far ignorance takes people from not understanding the reality. Now, we spoke about...
And you have Iran supporting this regime.
Yes.
Iran and the most senior advisor to the president of Iran, Wilayati, came and said, we will support Bashar Assad until the last moment. This is how despicable this Iranian regime is. Hezbollah came and supported the Assad regime against and slaughtered the Sunni Muslims in Syria. There's a statement by the deputy foreign minister 10 years ago saying that he was threatening the Americans, saying that if Bashar al-Assad regime goes down, who is going to protect the Israeli borders? So Iran was saying basically, we are protecting our man, which is Bashar al-Assad, who is protecting Israel for you. And people come and all these Iranian lovers, come on, show me what you're going to say basically in the comments today. This is what your leadership is saying. And we should have a whole episode on Iran and its own persecution of Sunni Muslims inside Iran.
And Iraq.
In Baluchistan, in the Ahwaz.
It's probably people hold them, and again, we can talk about this another time, as kind of like a bastion for unity when they also have control in Iraq, and we've seen what's been happening in Iraq to the Sunnis and all the massacres.
Definitely.
So, the rebels of the people, the Syrians who stood up against Bashar al-Assad are pretty much like Hussein in a sense, right? They're standing up against
they are
oppression.
the Husseins of the Ummah.
But the people who...
What is al-Hussein radiallahu anhu? He is the model Sahabi. Yeah, that was a rebel against tyranny. What did the Syrian people do? Rebelled against tyranny. So the real Husseins are actually the Syrian people. And the real Yazids are, Iran and Bashar al-Assad and Hezbollah.
So speaking on Iran, Hezbollah, and there's Russia. So we're speaking now. We're kind of taking this cake, this pie, one piece at a time to understand all the players and what they're trying to do. Why is Russia backing? Why is Iran, Russia, and Hezbollah? We can separate them however you wish. Why are they backing the Assad regime? What's in it for them? What's their strategic goals?
Well, see, Putin, for the last couple of decades, his goal was to make Russia great again, right? Make Russia great again. That's what it is. Like, Trump wants to make America great again. And Putin, 20 years ago, wanted to make Russia great again. What does that mean, great again? A country is great when it has influence over the world's affairs. The Russians, for a longer time, only had basically influence within their post-Soviet countries, right? In Central Asia and in Eastern Europe, and that's really it. So to project power abroad, as a Russian empire, they went to Africa and they went to Syria, wherever there's opportunity. So that's partly what the Russians are doing. They want to be able to impact the politics of the Middle East, because the one who can impact the politics of the Middle East can have a bigger say in the world arena. You see what I'm saying?
What about Iran and Hezbollah? Like, what is their interest specifically in Syria?
Oh no, Iran, we know. We've already discussed it many times. Iran wants to influence the Middle East fully. Like, Iran has the way Iran decided to project its power across its borders is through the Shia sect. They hijacked the Shia Ja'fari 12ers sect, and sadly, again, it's hijacked, fooled all these Shia people who want to be good Muslims, yani. So that's how they projected it. So in Lebanon they have Hezbollah, in Iraq they have the Iraqi Shia and their militias, in Yemen they have the Zaydi Shia there, and so forth. In Syria, they, because Bashar Al Assad was the American man, they didn't have a choice, so they have to align. Remember, you see how they align? Iran didn't go and push out the Alawis and bring their own people. There is Shia in Syria. You see what I'm saying? I forgot the percentage, but at least basically few percent. It doesn't matter who, but they could take over the country. Like the Alawis were 8%. You see what I'm saying? So the Iran didn't come in to replace Bashar, because Bashar was the American preferred man. So they have to align with the American interests. Okay, well, we'll deal with him. And they built relationship with him so they can have, if you look at the map, for Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine. So there's this whole corridor. We call this Al-Hilal al-Shi'i, basically, which is the Shia Crescent. It's projection of power. What is power? Being able to influence others. Being able to basically gain access to resources, gain access to the geostrategic places and so forth.
And so, and also, is it also the case that utilizing, and you mentioned the corridor, you mentioned the Shia Crescent, but Syria is also placed in a very strategic location that in order for them to resupply, let's say Hezbollah, they do need that.
Yeah, they need that, exactly. Yeah.
Like corridor alive.
But that's what the corridor is all about, yeah.
Got it. Iran is focused. They have other things they need to focus on. This whole thing, there's Hezbollah, there's Israel, there's a few things that Iran has gotten themselves into, and then Russia is dealing with the whole escalations with Ukraine. You have all the long range missiles and all that stuff happening and being shot right into Russia land. It seems like they're occupied more than they were before. Where does this leave Bashar?
Well, let's see. Like, we can't quickly basically make decisions. Definitely, the Russians are stretched. How important this foothold in the Syrian coast, and how much is Putin willing to risk to keep it? Because again, Russia doesn't have too much influence. You see what I'm saying? Like, you need to understand. It's not. It's too far. It's beyond their reach, to be honest. They haven't done great. Even in certain areas in Africa, they didn't do as good. His name Pergovian. So yeah, so the Wagner Group. Look what happened with the Wagner Group. It backfired. Like, they actually went to invade Moscow. So you need to understand, it's the Russians. We need to see what's their moves right now. Definitely, they retreated away from certain areas. They're still blasting the rebel areas with they're bombing them, bombing civilians, bombing hospitals. They bombed 6 hospitals. Right, between the Russians and the Syrian regime, mostly the Russians, they bombed 6 hospitals. So they're still there. They backed off because they don't want to lose their own people. They might have limited soldiers on the ground, so they retreated to their air base and their seaport in Tartus and Laziqiyah, and the coast basically. And they just told the Assad regime, you need to take care of this, right? You have men on the ground. It's your country. You need to safeguard these areas, and we will support you from the air. So the Russians are going to take limited, and this is what they did before, limited role in securing Syria and securing the Assad regime. At the end of the day, the one that's like what makes it or breaks it is foots on the ground. So the Russians, at the end of the day, don't have much. If the Assad regime falls, they're out.
So speaking of boots on the ground, I saw something about the specific militias in Iraq now entering.
No,
the Shia
the
militias
Americans,
entering.
the Americans actually targeted them, so they don't enter. Again, see, the Americans are really supporting the rebels, so they bombed these Shia factions, so they don't come in. You see what I'm saying? Like Americans are actually securing this game. The biggest say in Syria is America.
So we spoke about America having a specific goal of what they want to do, build kind of a secular state that protects. The end game is also that's something that secures and stable, so that there's no worry for Israel.
Stable and strong. Strong so it can control its population. Stable so it doesn't cause political issues and geostrategic issues in the region.
So I'm sure most viewers would be wondering, where do these rebels fit in? Like, some of them are Islamists, right? Like where do they fit into this picture? It seems like, are they just being used and then at the end the rug will be pulled out under them?
Yes. Yes, 100%. Anybody who expects otherwise, subhanAllah, politically unaware, sadly. I'm not here trying to put people down or show any hopelessness or helplessness. Inshallah, this ummah will come back. And what's happening in Syria right now, even with what the rebels are doing, is a sign that the ummah doesn't like its state of affairs. People want change. Will this change things? Well, it doesn't matter, to be honest. What matters is basically people desiring change, wanting change, and inshallah, Allah will give Allah will give this gift of liberation of the Muslim land one point in time, inshallah, in our lives.
Someone may push back and on the point of that the rug will be pulled. Let's say, for example, is there a possibility that a situation can arise where you have in Afghanistan that the Taliban were took over and on the condition that the agreement with America was, and this is out there, that they don't attack and don't fight against any of America's allies, and they basically secure the area? Is this something that is a possibility in Syria, even if it's a slight possibility?
Look, some of the rebels will be part of the government. Some of the rebels today, the more secular ones, will be part of the formation of the government. Even some of the moderate Islamists will be part of the government. I believe that. Is it good for Syria? I think it's better for Syria. Look, right now, you have Bashar Al Assad. Getting rid of Bashar definitely is good. So this is so I can be positive. I am positive. Getting rid of the regime is amazing. What's happening right now, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless everybody who's trying to topple this despicable regime. So, but we also want to be realistic. You understand, Yani, that Syria is not going to be the Islam is not going to rule Syria after this revolution. It's okay. It's fine as a step forward. I can see how it is a step forward, and we should basically be happy at the toppling of this regime.
So is there a percentage chance that it becomes something more Islamist
No.
in this case? Or is it too strategic of an area that it needs to be where it's located right beside Israel? They need to make sure that
it will never
it's
happen.
secular.
It will never happen. It's right now, it will never happen. People need to stop. And you can basically take my words right now, maybe 5-10 years from today, whatever, hopefully not 5 years, 3 to 5 years, or 2 years from now, 1 year from now, it will not happen. It will not happen. And even the rebels stopped asking for these things. Everybody's become more, that's why the names are changed. The rhetoric is changed. The rebels have been remolded by Turkey based upon Americans' dictation. So everybody's saying, look, we want a national government. We need a civil state that is inclusive of everybody. We want the rule of law. We want justice. Nobody's speaking about Islam nobody's demanding Islam to be ruling Syria. Forget it. You know what I'm saying? And for those minority who are, it's not going to happen. Let's be realistic. But what does that mean? We lose hope? No. We should think about how can we basically fully liberate our lands, not from in Syria, from Morocco to Indonesia. All the Syrian people, they should have processes and mechanisms that secures justice in the country, that secures accountability against the government, that first and foremost also creates a strong Syria, a strong economy, a strong technological and industrial base, a strong scientific community, a strong Syria, a human development project. Speaking about basically ruling by Islam before this is I think is a waste of time. Okay? Because Islam can only be adopted by strong people. Cannot be adopted by the weak. You see what I'm saying? Because nobody wants Islam to be in power. So if people don't have power, forget about basically asking for Islam to be in power. That's why the Syrian people today, the best shot is to basically, participate, but with political awareness in the new step in Syria. Sadly, it will be formed and molded by the world powers. But what the Syrian people should continue to resist. We're not done yet. Even after toppling Bashar Al Assad, the Syrian people should understand the resisting oppression did not end. You see what I'm saying? Until you make Syria strong and independent country. Independent from any global powers pressuring it, to be whatever the West wants it to be. That's when the Syrian people can say, look, now we have our political emancipation. We are a fully independent country. We are a strong nation. We are as independent as China and Russia. And we want to basically live by our Islam. Nobody can dare to basically question that. We're hasty.
I know, of course.
The Muslimin. We've been colonialized for 220 years plus. And I'm using basically the beginning of modern Egypt in 1804 when Muhammad Ali Pasha came in. It's literally 220 years. We want solutions in 3 weeks, in 2 months, in 1 year. Ya akhi, our decline has been happening for hundreds of years. And we've been occupied for 200 plus years. It will take some time. So we need to have the mindset that we need to live our life resisting oppression until we fully change our destiny and actually have our own political self-determination.
So, subhanAllah, it's what you said is very inspirational, Sheikh. And I'm just thinking right now, the viewer, there's a couple of questions that might still be on their mind. And so I want to talk about 2 brief questions just to understand some other key players in the region. And then we're going to talk about a quick question on military strategy and something that's going on here and prediction. So, the Kurds, right? We can't talk about Syria without talking about the Kurds that are in Syria.
Yeah.
Are they supportive of this offensive? What are their aims? Who are they working with? And I know Turkey is working with the other rebel groups. Like, what is each group's interest?
The Kurds are fully aligned with the Americans, fully supported by Americans out loud in the public, and there's nothing hidden. Sadly, lots of these Kurds are fully secularists.
Marxists,
some are Marxists, they're more democratic, and the Americans are supporting them because they were always basically, again, it's a minority. The West always comes and grabs the minority. Who is the majority in the Muslim world from Jakarta to the Sunnis? Have you ever seen basically that the Americans supporting any Sunnis? So from a populist perspective, not a specific family or whatever, From families, yes, like in the Gulf regions and even in the CEC and so forth. So specific segments, but the population, no. It's always the minorities. So the Kurds are a minority. The way Sykes-Picot divided the Kurds, so the Kurdish people live in a specific area. These Satanists from Britain and France, the way they did it, they cut the area into 4 pieces. 1 piece went to Iraq, 1 piece went to Iran, 1 piece went to Turkey, 1 piece went to Syria. Why would you do that unless you're a devil? So that's how they're devilish. Well, because now you continue to have a destabilization. The Kurds wants to be unified, but they're divided. The Kurds now, the Kurds, because the Kurds want to unify. That means basically that area could secede from the country, whether it's Turkey, Iran, Iraq, or Syria. So the Kurds are always a threat to the nation, and that's why the Americans will always support them. They will never give them a state, but they will always basically support them within the country to basically be one of the chess pieces within that country. So the Kurds need to wake up and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to basically to preserve Syria and the unity of Syria, and to be Muslim first in Syria. Nobody should be Syrian. We should be Muslims in Syria, that's it. The Kurds should see the Turkmen and should see the Arab and should see even the Shia and the Sunni as equals. This is how we can create a homogeneous unification that needs to start from within these damned borders that were, set upon us. So the Kurds basically are in a big trap. America will never give them what they want, but they will always use them against their brothers and sisters. This tension needs to stop. So the Kurds needs to realize it as a population, because the sellouts on top needs to basically be pushed away. And that can only happen with the Kurds and others, all the other Muslims, when we have political awareness.
So, Sheikh, we mentioned Turkey and we mentioned the Kurds as well. Very quickly, what is Turkey's interest in Syria? Is it to prevent the Kurds? As you said, you're speaking about nationalism and the Kurds. What would be the answer to that?
So look, Turkey as a country, it has a huge interest in Syria. Like, if Turkey was independent player, and it is kind of independent, not fully, but if it was strong enough to project its political power, it should have took over Syria. Like, if I was Turkey, I'd just go inside Syria, take over Syria, unify Turkey and Syria together. This is what should happen. But Turkey does not look that far. Turkey is still trying to build a strength, which is understandable. It is understandable. It would be a stupid move to do that, because it will get crushed by the world powers. And I'm not giving it as an excuse. They should have built themselves to get there. How? Partly by basically remolding the country ideologically. Half of the Turks are still secularists, as we said last time. Taib. So what is, from a Turkish political perspective, how do they see it? They see that the biggest danger are the Kurds. Because the biggest issue that Turkey had was with the Kurds inside Turkey. So now basically you have Turks, you have Kurds in Iraq that have autonomous region. Now you have the Kurds in Syria. They're going to have autonomous region. It's going to be a disaster. So Turkey just wants to defy the what they've put on their own terrorist list, which is the Kurds in Syria.
Yes. So is that their only interest in Syria? Or is there anything else that they have as an interest?
So that's their biggest interest, and then serving, to be honest, aligning with the Americans on serving American interests in Syria by taking care of these rebels. Because look, at the end of the day, these rebels also impact. If they're loose, they will impact Syrian Turkish politics. And the other thing is basically the flood of civilians in Syria into Turkey. So these are the three things.
Quick prediction, very quick here. Will Syria become a secular government that's unified, or will it be broken into different pieces, autonomous?
Sadly,
regions?
it could be broken, and the Kurds might get an autonomous. Maybe. I think probably not. But right now, basically, people are speaking about like a unified Syria again. So I would say, as we said earlier, you want to keep the Kurds inside to create more problems in the future. You see what I'm saying?
Now, final question. This is something that we've been hearing a lot the past, I would say, 8 years, from 2016 up until, let's say, just recently, is that people would say, in hindsight, looking at what's happened in Syria, that the revolution didn't work, the rebellion did not work. And they'll ask the question, were the Syrians wrong to rebel against Bashar Al Assad? And some would even go as far to say, and I've heard this from some clergy people, that there was some stability there before under Bashar Al Assad. We don't endorse him. And in hindsight, it wasn't the right thing to do.
Yeah, and this is the talk of the cowards and the politically unaware and those who don't fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala but fear the tyrants. You see, God created us to rally for justice. And if the Syrian people, with all their piety and belief in Islam and belief in Allah, decided to rebel against a tyrant that's worse than Fir'aun, who are we basically to tell them not to? Imagine basically Musa alayhi salam and his people in Egypt, and some of these scholars come say, well, we shouldn't have to. And actually, it's in the Quran, actually. They told one of the quotations in the Quran against Musa alayhi salam that we used to be at peace before you came to us. SubhanAllah. These people are exactly as these scholars of the Bani Israel who are so full of nifaq. You know what I'm saying? Subhanallah. Where did the hadith of إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ? Well, the people had the niyyah of having justice in Islam in Syria. That's why they went out in the first place. Oh no, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ, we forget it now. And this is a problem, wallahi. And how will we ever liberate our lands and liberate ourselves from the tyranny if we never stand up? We should just sit there and basically do worship these tyrants and defend them, and just always basically feel super helpless that there is no way out for us. Where is the Quran, where basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us million times to trust Him, million times to have tawakkul, million times that He told us He will give us victory when we move. All these basically, these scholars, they forget them. A'udhu billah. Where is وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ? Where did that go? Whoever fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make a way out for them and provide for them means unexpected, or from unexpected sources. All these ayat, all this aqidah gets forgotten by these cowards, subhanallah. The nifaq have filled the hearts of many. And this is literally always basically the attitude of the munafiqeen. If you read Surah Al-Anfal and Surah Al-Tawbah and Surah Al-Ma'idah والنساء, يعني lots of description about munafiqeen, يعني enough.
Well, Sheikh, Jazakumullah khairan. It's always great to
Allah
spend
barik
time
fikum,
with you and
bless you,
pick your
inshallah.
brain.
Jazakumullah khair.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So make sure to like, subscribe, spread this episode, because this is probably the only comprehensive deep dive into the issue of what's going on in Syria. And let's uplift this ummah, and make sure to stay tuned on the next episode of i3 Pulse. We'll see you then. Assalamu alaikum.